Good evening, good evening, good evening. I hope it's a happy Sunday on your end. Welcome to day 16 of The Woman Called You Do Over January. And this January, we're taking a journey through 31 days, a journey of 31 days to declutter and deconstruct the mind to gain clarity. You know, over the past 2 weeks, I've explored different aspects of ways and means of decluttering the mind. I've shared different techniques, popular one there, because I've got feedback from that from women who have been brave enough, a few women who have been brave enough to practice that technique, do it firsthand at home. And that's the brain dumping technique. It's been interesting so far, at least for me. I'm relearning because one of the things about deconstructing the mind is you have to unlearn to relearn, like I've been saying previously. So today, having spoken about choosing our battles wisely, good battles and bad battles yesterday, good battles, I think, was day 14, bad battles was day 15. We're here today as promised. You know, how do I know if I am mentally weak? How do I know if I am mentally weak? I know when we're talking about being mentally weak, the opposite of it, of course, is mental strength. And so many people, albeit, wrongly, believe that mental strength is about acting tough. And I tell you, acting tough doesn't equal mental strength. Mental strength, in its loose definition, is just simply an individual's resilience and control over their emotional and psychological well-being. And where we're talking about or discussing the mind, decluttering the mind, it's about everything that pertains to our emotional and psychological well-being. So when we're talking about mental weakness, we're talking about people who do not have the capacity, the wherewithal to control their mental state. Like, I don't make light of the fact that some aspects of mental weakness can be rooted in mental illness. That's a given. But I'm not here talking about mental illness. I'm saying all your, you know, the parameters that make you a healthy human being are in place. But this one is an emotional deficiency. It's a psychological deficiency. So that's the kind of weakness we're talking about. And like I said, so many times where somebody is mentally weak or somebody has claims to be mentally strong, they might just simply be acting tough. Yorubas will call it biraga. The fact that somebody acts tough does not mean the person is mentally weak. Sometimes you might act tough. Yeah, you're physically strong and all that. But you might be, I said might be, mentally weak. And one of the things mentally weak people will continue to do, like I mentioned yesterday when I was talking about bad battles, they continuously sabotage themselves. They sabotage themselves in a way that they don't even know. So I hope that by the end of today's episode, today's broadcast, you probably will be able to look at some of the things I mentioned and, weigh them against your own behavior, your attitude, your main, and decide whether you are mentally weak in some areas. There's some people that can have all of it. There's some people who can show signs in the most unlikely of ways. So it's not as if one person has every indication of being mentally weak. No. Where somebody might be strong in one aspect, you might be weak in another one. And the thing is, if you don't learn to deal with that particular aspect of your weakness, like they say, a stitch in time saves nine. If you don't stitch up that tear, before you know it, it will spread to other areas. And I'm sure nobody wants that. Um, for me, I do not take lightly mental health. I am always quick to say where you may now look at these things I will discuss, and you might see certain things about your personality that are there, and you practice trying to overcome them. Because I think in the course of this week, yes, today's Sunday, in the course of this week, I will certainly examine what it takes to be mentally strong and ways you can move from the mental weakness spectrum and start the journey, progress towards becoming mentally strong. Like I've said to us, I said, look, anything that has to do with the mind, that has to do cognitive ability, it's not a quick fix thing. It's not a 1 day thing. I don't expect that in 31 days you totally declutter your mind. Oh, it's like waving a magic wand and you're a different person. No, it's a process. You just start. Like I always say every day, also John Locke, anyone can learn anything at any stage so long as they take it in steps. So like I said, today I'll be discussing aspects and the checklist of mental weakness. So somebody watching might decide and tick off some boxes, or you might not have any box to tick off. That means you're mentally strong. But I'm sure even this woman speaking here, there's still some things I'm dealing with in terms of, my mental strength. So just sit back and, like as usual, I'll say, take your notes, your pen, your paper, because this is not a preachy thing. This is just to hopefully teach and get some things into you, and hopefully your journey to clarity begins. One of the first things you need to understand about mentally weak people, oftentimes they are indecisive. They're always wavering between different opinions. Even the Bible said it, without actually saying, oh, this is a sign of mental weakness. It says there are people who just waver between different opinions. A mentally weak person cannot stick to a decision. And it's not because they don't want to. It's not because they don't want to. They simply don't trust their own judgment. That is why a mentally ill person will. Yes, I know the Bible tells us that in the a multitude of counsel, in the multitude of counsel, there is safety. But sometimes too much of everything is not good. Even with all the different counsel they get, they still can't form an opinion. That's why you see most people who are indecisive, you need to just pause and begin to see and look and try to evaluate why you are acting that way, why you can't seem to make a decision. It's become normal place. No, my husband he will take that decision for us. He will take that decision for us. Sometimes decide on something and put it forward as a suggestion. So being indecisive and hiding it. Some people are very good at it. Mentally weak people are good at it. You don't have to reach decision, but you just give this thing to someone else to make that decision for you. So if you check indecisiveness, you might just be mentally weak. Another thing you must look out for, if you are overly indulgent, if a person is overly indulgent, every time you are a slave to your impulses, this one passes, you get it, and this new shoe comes, you buy it. You hear that they are advertising something on IG, you are quick to run there. You don't consider the consequences of your action. I don't want to even bring examples that are, just way out there, but I'm just using this as simple illustrations. You are overly indulgent. I tell you, everything about you is, uh, how do Igbo call that thing? Unsobu, unsobu, or any Igbo person watching, you can just write when they say now, 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 now in Igbo. If that is how you are, you crave instant gratification. Most people, I've been there when I was battling with addiction years ago. Everything, once the impulse comes, once the urge comes, you need to feed it. That's a sign of mental weakness. Anyway, even they tell you addiction is a sign of mental weakness because there's a total loss of control. Another thing mentally weak people do, They are always wasting time feeling sorry for themselves. I mean, I don't know if you've seen sometimes when you're, maybe if you're somebody who counsels people, you're talking to somebody, trying to, trying to share, trying to just make them have an insight to whatever is ailing them. And they keep on telling you, oh, leave it. You don't understand. You don't understand. If you are in my shoes, you will know how I'm feeling. Look, when you waste time feeling sorry for yourself, it's a sign of mental weakness. I mean, you must be ready. If you are seeking for help, you must be ready to pull yourself up by your bootstrings and begin, you know, to take responsibility for everything that is happening to you in your life. I spoke about it yesterday when I was talking about bad battles. You must understand that life is not fair. I remember Teddy Jake saying, a favor isn't fair. Life also is not fair. So you're not the only one things are happening to. I'm telling you, everybody is facing their aggro in one way or the other. But when you build an altar to that thing you are going through and you keep feeling sorry for yourself, it is a sign of mental weakness. Oftentimes, you even get people who are like they're just fed up with that attitude you keep on, you know, putting forward. So don't waste time feeling sorry for yourself. You don't need anybody to come and join you in your pity party. If you're always feeling sorry for yourself, then sadly, it's a sign of mental weakness. Remember, today I'm just talking about mental weakness so you can see, you can identify. Because if we need to deconstruct the mind, to unlearn, to begin to relearn, you must face yourself for who you are. Today, when we're talking about how do I know if I am mentally weak, it is like facing the woman in the mirror, looking at yourself for who you are, coming to yourself, coming out to yourself, so to speak. You're no longer going to hide in the closet to yourself. So if any box applies to you, take it. Another thing mentally weak people will do, they are always perpetually giving away their power to other people. And it's really sad. Allowing others to control them. And when you continue to allow others to control you, look, I'm not talking about coming to physically control you, hold you by your shoulder and say, no, this is what you do, this is what you do. The kind of control I'm talking about, where you give away your power. Oh, it is my husband's fault. He's the one making me feel bad. My boss is making me feel bad. My mother, this and that. When you do that, you are handing over your power to that person. Because you are saying the person has, let me call it your mumu button. And the person knows the right things to trigger you. The person knows the right things to say. And you forget that, like I said yesterday, you have to be in control of your emotions. And you have the choice to respond when things happen, when people say things to you. But when every time somebody says things to you and you feel, it's because I don't have money, they're treating me like this. It's because you have not truly gauged what the issue is. And it's a sign of mental weakness. Another sign of mental weakness is when you're so afraid to move out of your comfort zone. I'm telling you, you will do anything to avoid change. Most times people think it's just you being, she's opinionated. Oh, this is how it is. We started doing it like this in 1990 something, so it must be like this. It must be like this. You're probably just simply scared of change. And when you're mentally weak, you have a fixed mindset. You don't have a growth mindset. Growth mindset. You forget to understand that change is inevitable. And you must rise up to begin to adapt to change. But you see, when you believe that no, it's you just seem it can't be done differently, you are actually weak. You are actually weak. You constantly shy away from change. Whenever change is imminent, oh, you have to be that voice that advocates and agitates that change shouldn't come. And don't let's not get it twisted. Let's not misunderstand it. The fact that someone is mentally weak does not mean the person is not vocal. Like I said, somebody can be acting as if they are very, very strong. They can act tough. Usually mentally weak people are the ones that talk the most. They're the ones who are very opinionated. especially when they're saying my way or the highway, it's a sign of mental weakness. And if we should continue this way, you will see that you will not be flexible. A mentally strong person is not afraid to be flexible because he knows if this is, I will adapt to change whichever way possible. Another thing, there's an indicator that one is mentally weak. You keep on, I talked about this thing yesterday. You keep on wasting time on things you can't control. I mean, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome, that's like insanity. Anywhere you step into, people know you will complain. Oh, they took my this thing. It's because the internet wasn't working. Oh, traffic. Eh, They don't focus on the good. I said it the other day. I said, where there is an issue, it can't be all bad. There must be something good you can recognize in it. So instead, I gave the example that time when I said a couple of days I said ago when I said maybe I sell something to somebody on Instagram. I sell on Instagram, right? And a client asks me that she wants something and she doesn't get back to me. Instead of thinking that, oh, these people, that's what they do, this and that, I would try to put myself in her shoes. I wonder why there was no call back. You understand? I wonder why there is no call back. I did not say, well, maybe I'll reach out to her. But you see, the weak, mentally weak person makes their own assumptions, comes to a conclusion, and that is it. Another thing mentally weak people do, another thing that's a sign of mental weakness, this need for validation. You want to please everybody. You want to please everybody. You want to fit in with people so they will like you. You know, it's a case of your self-worth depending on what people think about you. And it's sad. It's really, really sad. You are so afraid to speak up, to speak the truth. You rather go with popular opinion. And I see a lot of it on social media. You will know what people's personal opinions are, but on social media, because they're afraid of not being liked, they strive so much for attention. You know, they can't handle being upset. So let us just go with the flow. And seriously, we're breeding people who have this bandwagon mentality. And that's a sign of mental weakness. If you have bandwagon mentality, you want people to love you. You want to please everyone. You want to jump on something, even if you know truly you don't like it. It becomes a problem. And when you have this particular, indicator of mental weakness, it snowballs into a lot of things. And that's why you see they'll say mentally weak people, they try as much as possible to mask their insecurities. When they don't know something, they will pretend. They would pad it so everything looks good. Meanwhile, inside, they know what their insecurities are, but they will mask it. And the bad thing about this thing, I was talking earlier about the stitching time saves 9. No matter how much you mask your insecurities, one day the cracks, because it's like a fissure, the cracks will begin to, you know, happen. I see when you see a wall where it's cracking, and before you know it, lizards, all kinds of things will begin to creep into those things, into those fissures, those your insecurities. So one thing that's an indicator, albeit a bad one, is insecurities, masking them. There is nothing wrong with insecurities. Those are the things that make us vulnerable. But learn to embrace them instead of masking them. When you continually mask them, it's a sign of mental weakness. And one other thing that happens for people with mental weakness is almost like a contradiction. They will tell you failure is not an option. Yes. And at the same time, they will be afraid to make calculated risks. Because if they've had it in their head that they will fail, I'm telling you. But you see, instead of weighing the pros and the cons of that thing they want to do, immediately they just see it. challenge before them immediately becomes larger than what the gains from that thing will be. And because in their head they've seen it that, hey, man, failure is not a choice in this thing, it's not an option, they just cringe back. Are you always having aborted dreams? Are you always afraid of following through on something? Like yesterday, I was talking about I was talking about battles, and I said, it's not the money, it's not the people. Oh, no, yesterday wasn't battle. Yesterday was the enemy between your ears. Yes, day 15. When I said, it's not the money, it's not the people, it's not all those things that are stopping you from going into something. Yes, they all form part of it. But the fact remains, it is you, the insecurities within, the self-doubt. Yes, God will make a way, but just when you finish praying, you step out in faith and push through. So when you're a weak person, you'll see that everything about what I said yesterday, you blame every other thing, every parameter, you will blame it, but blame yourself. You need to begin to look inwards and see whether there's any reason why you have a legit fear of taking calculated risks. At this point, you might need to bring out your pen and paper if this applies to you, because this is very, very serious. When it comes to decision making is one of the greatest components of mental alertness. And when you cannot follow through on things because you believe failure is not an option, you might begin to, maybe you might need professional help, because that's where they say regressive therapy, to find out what exactly it is about your past that is making you this way, that is making you fear stepping out. Another thing mentally weak people do is, if most of these things are they're recurring, you know, you keep on dwelling on your past. Remember I said there are some women, they just host a pity party about the woman they used to be. But it's not even enough, because where you are mentally weak, the fact is that you have allowed your emotional and psychological wounds from the past define you. And if you don't deal with this thing, you don't deal with this emotional baggage, I'm telling you, you refuse to acknowledge your past, you keep on living in denial. That's why this thing they call, I don't know, back then when we were in university, we used to call it Okafor's Law. I don't want to expatiate on it here. You will find yourself perpetually being an adherent of the Okafor's Law, because you will keep on, you know, going back to destructive patterns. If you're a woman who has once been with a narcissist and you manage to escape, and you've not dealt with the issues, you've not dealt with, the baggage from being with a narcissist, and you just push it aside. Before you know it, is it any wonder that some women are drawn into destructive patterns over and over again, reliving bad experiences? Is it any wonder? I mean, over and over again, reliving bad experiences. You'll be fantasizing about the what could have been. If I was with this Bobby now, this would have happened. If I was with that person now, this would have happened. It's a sign of emotional weakness. Because guess what? You are constantly suppressing your emotions. You are not facing the fact that Bobby used to be violent. Your mind is only seeing the good aspects of that relationship. And you now go back. We see a lot of those things happening on social media. So you see, when you keep on dwelling on your past, you run the risk of denying your pain, being caught up in the same patterns over and over again. So I want to believe that If you've ticked this box, you actually need to talk to somebody. Yes, pray. Like I said, I will never make light the place of prayer. But you need to talk to somebody. It's a destructive pattern. It's a sign of mental weakness. Because I've seen where people still, even if it's not the same person they go back to, they are attracted to such people without knowing why. There are professionals you can speak to who can help you deal with this kind of, I'll call it a characteristic of mental weakness rather, if you ticked off this box. And like I said, if you've ticked off this box, just try to do some regressive personal therapy on yourself. And you see that you are making the same mistake over and over again. And that's because you likely did not take responsibility for your role in that behavior. You didn't. So if you want to truly move on, and begin to make the right decisions for your life, you need to seek help. And that's the truth. I'm just here sharing what the indicators for mental weakness is. If I tell you that I can provide the kind of help you need, I'll be speaking an untruth. So if you're that person, you need to speak to someone who has had experience with dealing with people who have been traumatized by narcissists. Because usually, when it comes to relationship, there is usually the component of narcissism. But if it's for other things, you just can't make decisions, you don't know how to prioritize, you're always unproductive, you might just need a kick. You understand? Because most people that have mental weakness, they are always caught up in the non-essentials. Remember I talked yesterday about, or 2 days ago, about non-essential battles. They're always caught up in non-essentials. They will never do something that is really productive. You know how they say running around like a headless chicken, busy doing nothing? That is what happens here when you cannot prioritize. So you just want to be seen to be very, very busy. And it's like going around in circles. And that, my sister, is mental weakness in itself. Another thing that is a sign of mental weakness. See, I read somewhere on social media today when somebody said, when you are not happy for somebody's success, that is witchcraft itself. Yes, it's witchcraft, but guess what? It's also a sign of mental weakness. You envy people, their success. You can't celebrate them. You can't appreciate them. Instead, you grow jealous, like, why isn't it me? Why isn't it me? It is a sign of mental weakness. I mean, you feel threatened that of mental weakness. One of the reasons why I'm doing this, why I set up the Woman Called You platform when I turned 49, like I said, in a month from today, I'll be turning 52 by God's grace, was because I felt the need of putting, into play the tools that will help. It's not a big thing, no. Just women around me making a commitment to make sure a woman is able to unearth that treasure within her. If I wasn't mentally strong, I won't do it, because I'll feel, you might end up teaching women certain things and they get better than you. So no, it doesn't bother me. I am satisfied when I read people say, Auntie Nene has impacted my life. She taught me this. It's my joy. But guess what? I'm also learning daily. Because a mentally strong person just doesn't sit on her house and feels she has arrived. She's learning daily to grow, not to be in competition. So when you see yourself constantly resenting people's success, yes, people call it witchcraft, but you see, it's mental weakness. Because if you are not mentally weak, you will not envy something that if you put yourself to it, not everybody can be doing the same thing. But if you apply yourself to do whatever it is you ought to be doing, if you are willing to work hard, for your own chance of success, you will be successful. At least likely successful. When you set out to be successful, you are not using anybody as your benchmark. And that's a mistake most people do. When you constantly use somebody as your benchmark, it's also a sign of mental weakness. It's a sign of mental weakness. Another thing about mental weakness is when you flee from a fight. Remember, 13, day 13, day 14 was about, first, day 13 was choosing your battle wisely. Day 14 was choosing your battle wisely by fighting the good battles. Day 15 was, no, I'm missing it up. 12 was choosing your battles wisely. 13 was good battles. 14 was bad battles, because yesterday was the enemy between your ears. Yes. So one of the things I said is, even in good battles, you may need to give up. But when you have pushed as much as you can to ensure that it's a win-win situation, if you don't understand what I'm saying, the videos are up so you can watch them to understand more deeply. That's why I don't want to mix it up. But for a mentally weak person, you don't even fight at all to now talk of giving up. I'm telling you, somebody who is mentally strong, I was talking about inventors yesterday. Every failure an inventor had was an opportunity for him to grow and improve and learn a new thing. I'm telling you, you keep trying until you get it right. But a mentally weak person just goes, it's not for me. It's not for me. It's not for me. Another sign of mental weakness, like I said, remember all the things I'm saying. Check off the boxes that apply to you, because later you may need to revisit them. Another thing about mentally weak people, and this one is, in fact, they will mask it as, oh, I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert. If you feel, oh, sorry, I'm an extrovert. Sorry, I'm an extrovert. Yes. Oh, I'm an extrovert. I'm an extrovert. If you fear being alone, you are mentally weak. I'm telling you. If you haven't learned to enjoy your company, you're mentally weak. It's simply feel mind. I said it. In fact, I've lost count now of what I say in every episode. I said it in one of the episodes. Embrace the silence. Yes, that was spiritual self-care. Yeah. Embrace the silence. They're so afraid to be alone. They love the cacophony of noise. Every time, they need people. They need the constant attention. This guy on IG, what's that his name? Igwe Tupac. That time I was talking about accolades. They need the accolades of men all the time. They forget that you can use your quiet moments, your downtime to be productive. No, they can't. They're totally dependent on other people for companionship. It is a sign of mental weakness. They're afraid when you don't want to be alone, you're afraid of facing the woman in the mirror. You're afraid of seeing yourself without spanks, naked and not ashamed. No, you're afraid of it. I'm telling you. I'm not saying you should become a recluse. I'm not saying you should be an introvert, as in, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying you can't 24/7 be sold to extroversion. It's not normal. Like, as I grow older, except people that really are close to me, but just think, yeah, I love my company. I love my company. It's my time to do so much. So if you're somebody who is constantly seeking for people around you, then it's a sign of mental weakness. It's a sign of mental weakness. You might think it's not, but reevaluate yourself. Reevaluate yourself. Every time you don't want to be alone with your thoughts. Even our Messiah, he had times that he stepped aside from the people. He yearned for his own company. And in his own company, the presence of the Father always came down. When I was talking for spiritual self-care, I said even in that solitude and silence, you begin to hear God. Let me just speak a little bit about instant gratification. Remember, I said if that applies to you, check it. You see, one of the major indicators of mental weakness, I mentioned it earlier, but I want to just throw some more light on it. You know, I talked about being self indulgent, losing all sense of propriety, where you don't consider the consequences and all that. Another thing that happens when you are mentally weak, I'm telling you, don't be quick. Don't be quick to be emotional. When you're overtly emotional, it's a sign of mental weakness. And most times, this particular one, people will take advantage of you. They will take advantage of you. If every little thing just stirs up your emotions, every little thing stirs up your emotions. It's not being a drama queen. No. Mentally strong people can be drama queens because I've had on a occasion where my husband or my siblings have said, "Oh, you're a drama queen, you're a drama queen," and I know that because there are things I would do. I'm doing them compulsively. I know it's not impulsive. You know, I'm compelled to do those things. But there are some people. It's like every dog has its day with you. People just trigger you. They trigger you and you're quick with your emotions. Please, I'm not saying you should suppress your emotions, but even the Bible says it. Be quick to hear and be slow to anger, slow to speak, and be slow to anger as well. You must consider that. I almost forgot it. I just had to, you know, remember it. Another thing that is an indicator for mental weakness. People who are mentally weak, they cannot accept an opinion that differs from theirs. You know, and sadly, I don't know if you've seen people who that they're just saying "oops," but you just leave it because they will never take your own opinion into account at all. They will not do it. They will not do it. They'll just constantly, they believe they are right, and you just leave them. And such people, if you're not careful, and that's the truth, they'll try to control you. I'm telling you, they'll try to control you. They'll try to control you. So, and if you who thinks you're mentally strong, you see yourself, oftentimes some of these things I've listed, you see yourself falling into such patterns. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong about being mentally weak temporarily. You know, there's nothing wrong because at least personally, I can identify with a lot of these things I've talked about. At least not, if not currently, at a point in my life. But like I always say, I always say of how thankful I am that I was opportune to be in therapy for a couple of months. So apart from treatment, there's also behavioral therapy, and for somebody who, like I said, you will check these things, you will tick off all the boxes, you will try by beginning to apply some of the things we've spoken about in the last couple of weeks and all of that, and you still see that there is no change. I'm not saying this, but sometimes, like I've said over and over again, these kind of things I'm talking about are indicators. It might just be you dealing with an emotional or psychological thing that in this process of the 31 days, you learn how to offload them, how to deal with them, understand your situation of risks and all that. But for some, it might be as a result, I'm not saying it is, of an underlying mental health issue, you know. So if you see yourself as mentally ill, you can choose to change it depending on your mindset, depending on how you want to start seeing things. But at the same time, you must commit to doing the things that you need to do for change to come. And I also want you to know that being mentally weak is not something you should be ashamed of. Tomorrow you can become a mentally strong person and overcome those challenges. As always, the choice is yours. The choice is yours. Remember, like I said, tick the boxes. Don't believe that or think in your mind that you can do all things, because that in itself is funny, but it's a sign of mental weakness. If you think you can do all things, yes, we can do all things through Christ that strengthens us. But when you think you can do all things, you'll be caught up in overreaching, overcommitment, and that in itself takes a mental toll on you. Sorry, I overshot 30 minutes. I thought it was going to be 30 minutes. It's now 40 something minutes. But notwithstanding, I hope I've been able to convey what it means to be mentally weak, to be suffering in echoes from the state of mental weakness. So tomorrow, I'll be discussing the indicators that points to the fact that you are a mentally strong person. I'm sure so many people like that because I believe there are a lot of mentally strong women out there. But what you just need to know is hear it to understand that that aspect of your personality you're exhibiting is actually a mental strength and not what other people might term it to be. So till tomorrow, thank you very much for watching, and